If you have ever experienced a partner who uses violence and abuse within a relationship, it can be really easy to look at yourself like you are weak, like you have no power, no control, that you don't have any sense of self. You may even feel like you're just putting up with it, that you've done nothing to try and stand up for yourself, that you really are a victim in those circumstances. But when you look underneath and behind closed doors, we often see acts of resistance in response to abuse. So victims who are abused will often try to do things to prevent or reduce, minimize, or detract from themselves in order to not be abused or reduce the amount of harm or even the length of like the argument that's happening. And we see those in the feels like small things that you do on a day-to-day basis. So things like making sure that the house is tidy and dinner is done is an act of resistance because it's trying to preempt a potential explosion in order to reduce the violence and the abuse that ensues from it. We see it in when you see the abuser start to escalate. You may usher children into a bedroom. You may try and distract them with, giving them an iPad, putting on a movie, giving them an activity to do so that you try and prevent them from witnessing, being impacted by any impending violence. We also see it when children come out of their bedrooms or out of the lounge room and say that they feel sick or they need a drink or they can't sleep. That's their act of resistance in trying to reduce, prevent, stop that abuse from escalating. That's what they do. It's also seen when children appear to side with the abusive parent. They do that for their own safety because in their minds, by siding with the abuser and agreeing and placating them, they are trying to minimize the amount of abuse that they cop and that their parent may cop as well. We also see it when you don't do what you're told. So you may deliberately or quietly not obey commands. And I do these air quotes because I don't want you to feel like I'm saying you should be doing those things. In every moment in our lives, living with an abusive person, we make those choices and decisions based on our knowledge, what we've experienced before, and what we anticipate that the best response is from us in order to reduce, prevent, stop, minimize the abuse that we've experienced before. So it can come from seeking help as well, reaching out to support services, telling friends about the abuse, refusing to wear makeup or sunglasses or long sleeve shirts to cover up bruises and marks and blemishes. We see it in just those little things that you feel it is that you do day to day in order to resist the violence. When I was learning about domestic violence and I came across this, act of resistance that victims and their children often do that we sometimes miss because we don't understand it. But we were told a story about a woman whose partner was very abusive to her, very violent, and would demand that she obey all of his demands. And he would demand that she braid his hair. He had long hair and he would demand that she braid it to make him look good and to, make him look handsome and to make him feel important and put together. And it talked about how she would braid his hair crookedly so that when he was walking out in the street with his chest puffed out and his head high, feeling, very important, very very powerful, very strong, very put together, that she would secretly feel, giggle and feel that sense, just a little sense of accomplishment, that while he felt so important and so, all of these things, he was actually walking around with a crooked braid in his hair. And that's an act of resistance. Whenever my ex-husband and I were, in that stage of tension building or explosion, or he had, abused me or called me something or made me feel in any sort of way, my act of resistance would be to change my Facebook profile. And it feels like something, really little and really insignificant, but it was my act of resistance to remove a happy smiling photo of us and just put up something of, either myself or just with my children or just a quote. That was an act of resistance, because I was, I guess, trying to, just put it out there to the world that we are not this happy couple at the moment. I don't really like him at the moment, but this is all I can do. Because if I were to talk back, tell him how I was feeling, ask that he stop, it either fell on deaf ears or he didn't care, or, all the other excuses. And so that became my act of resistance. And there are many things that we do in order to stop, prevent, reduce, minimize abuse that we may feel is weak, that we may feel is us just letting them walk all over us, and just putting up with the abuse, giving in to their demands. But what we're actually doing is based on our own experience and our own lived expertise of living with this person, is doing our best to try and prevent and stop that abuse. So you are not weak if you are giving in, putting up with, and letting them do what they want. It's an act of safety. It's the way you keep yourself safe. Acts of resistance, fascinating when you have a look into them and when you learn what they are. What are some of the things that you did within a relationship to try and, stop the abuse? Or it might have been, ushering children into another room, or if your partner, started on the children, you might have created a diversion or said something in order to bring that attention to yourself and take the attention off them. Sometimes we are very, very open with denying, obeying them, not following through with what they've asked us to do, or you could be really dramatic about it. So if your partner had, told you to do something, you would, do that thing, but in a very sort of overreacting, dramatized sort of sense. And it may not mean anything to them, but sometimes that makes us feel better, and it gives us a little bit more of a sense of personal control, little bit more of personal power, and just that little bit of accomplishment of, okay, I didn't just give in, I tried to the best of my ability to not do that, and I have to be okay with that. So I don't want you to feel like you've been weak or you've done anything wrong, but we use those acts of resistance, and I think it's really important for professionals and for practitioners to understand that victims in relationships of domestic violence do behave, say, respond in ways that we know or anticipate will keep us safe. We are the experts in our own lives. And so that needs to be upheld so much more. We know them. We know the relationship. We know the responses. We know what's going to happen. And so if you just put those little plans into place, of little safety plans of trying to stop, prevent, reduce, minimize the abuse as much as possible, then that's your act of resistance, and that's what you're using to keep yourself safe. You are significant because you are, and I love you because you exist. And I say that, I write it at the bottom of my post because it's true. You are significant just because you are. Not because of who you are or what you did or what you achieved or what you accomplished or any number of accolades or accomplishments. You are significant just because you are. And I do love you because you exist, because we are all one at the end of the day. We are all here just trying to live our lives, have an enjoyable experience, support another person, and just the fact that you exist is reason that you are lovable.